It's finally here. You've heard me talk about it for a while now. Today I'm going to go through a more comprehensive version of the chapters that follow, providing you with more in-depth examples to help you study more confidently so you can pass your industry certification exam. A few things before we dive into this new playlist. Remember, this information is based on the 7th edition textbook and our 7th edition video-based playlists. We're going to dive deeper than ever before with this version. So if you're new, hit that subscribe button and enable notifications so you can stay up to date on new information and post as it hits this page. If you find value in the content, smash that like button as it helps position this material in the search results here on YouTube so others may find the material a lot easily. Lastly, and probably the most important of them all, please ask questions in the comments and engage with us and others in this community. Because at the end of the day, this is a dedicated community to those who share your same interests in becoming ServSafe certified with the material being presented. We love responding to comments. So if you're ready, let's dive into it. Providing safe food. You'll be able to understand what a foodborne illness is and when a foodborne illness outbreak has occurred. You're going to hear me repeat these abbreviations, these acronyms, TCS, FDA, USDA. You're going to hear me constantly say it because you got to know what they mean. And if you're taking notes, I encourage you, if you ever hear me say, if you're taking notes, something you just want to just start taking notes on, okay? TCS, temperature control for safety. RTE, ready to eat food. Okay, you'll be able to understand what those are. The 5 risk factors for a foodborne illness, the populations with the highest risks for contracting a foodborne illness, ways to keep food safe, and the roles of government agencies in keeping food safe. A foodborne illness is a disease transmitted to people through food. Make sure you write this one down. A foodborne illness is a disease transmitted to people through food. An illness is considered an outbreak. When is it considered an outbreak in your operation? When these 3 things happen. 2 or more people have the same symptoms after eating the same food. They go to the hospital. It's reported by the individual. When I got food poisoning once, and we went to the hospital, we were told that the hospital doesn't report this to the local regulatory authorities. It is the consumer they encourage that reports it. So when 2 or more people have complained and they have the same symptoms after eating food, and it's been confirmed through laboratory analysis or testing, either through a fecal or a blood sample, it's been considered an outbreak. Now, what makes this dangerous? COVID. When COVID first broke, WHO announced that it was an outbreak when they had found that 4,000 people had been infected. The problem with that is if it takes 2 or more people to infect by eating the same food or having the same symptoms, 4,000, when 4,000 broke, I knew it was going to be hundreds of thousands of people. Usually by the time they catch 2 people, it's infected hundreds. If they catch it after infecting thousands, it's infected millions. COVID taught us so much about bacteria. And that's what made it so dangerous. So make sure you have this down. We're moving on. Challenges include time, language and cultural, literacy and education, pathogens, unapproved suppliers, high-risk customers, and staff turnovers. These are all things to food safety. These are all things that are negatively impacted because of food safety concerns. Obviously, the cost of foodborne illnesses to an operation could be loss of customers and sales, loss of reputation, right? The public loses trust in you, so you lose your reputation. Negative media exposure. We know the media has been known for blowing things completely out of proportion, but that's enough to help you lose your reputation. This includes lowering staff morale, right? People aren't so excited to show up to work. The restaurant's closed. We're cleaning. We're retraining. People just aren't happy to show up to work. Lawsuits and legal fees. If someone gets sick or potentially even dies in your operation, thousands of dollars, maybe even hundreds of thousands of dollars maybe even millions of dollars. That's why this stuff is so critically important. Staff missing work, right? Operation closes, can't open until the health department clears you. Okay? Then you're going to lose people, and then you're going to have to hire new people. Therefore, you're going to have to retrain. Time is money. And then when it's all said and done, the insurance premiums are going to go up. You're going to be paying a lot more money for insurance because you are now considered a high-risk liability. These are all costs of a foodborne illness to an operation. And the purpose of becoming ServSafe certified with Food Service Protection Manager status is that you have a base understanding of all this and how to prevent it. That's the key element here. Let me also reiterate something. The food handler, legally by the state of Florida, I don't know how this is in other states, but legally by the state of Florida, anyone that operates in and around food must have at least food handler training. Now, there are some operations like Chick-fil-A that have their own kind of food handler training. But that's not what this industry certification is about. We're upping you. You're going from a entry-level food handler certification to a management level certification. You need to have these down. Okay, there are 3 ways food becomes contaminated. We're going to talk about a little bit more in depth what these 3 things are in the up and coming slides, but we're going to start off with biological contaminants. Chemical and physical. Make sure you write these down and then write down the examples. So I would skip a line and write down the examples that follow. Starting with biological contaminants. What is a biological contaminant? We got bacteria. What makes bacteria so dangerous is you can't see it, smell it, or taste it. If you're taking notes, I would write that down. You cannot see, smell, or taste bacteria. We learned that with COVID. Nobody wanted it. Thousands of people got it, and hundreds of thousands of people died. That's what makes it so incredibly dangerous. Viruses, right? We know during flu season or when people are sneezing, you're like, one of our biggest concerns is, are you covering your mouth? Are you washing your hands? I don't want to get sick. Okay, those are biological contaminants. Parasites and fungi. Make sure you have all 4 of these written down. Chemical contaminants, cleaners, sanitizers, and polishes, right? Take a look at the picture here. The mist particles are going to go up, and what goes up eventually must come down. You got it. Okay, so these are examples of chemical contaminants. Oh, but wait, Pesci, isn't it common sense that you shouldn't spray this close to food? Yes, it is, and it should be common sense, but common sense isn't so common. That's why courses like this exist. That's why operations are required to have on hand at least 1 or 2 people that hold this industry certification, to hold all those underneath them accountable. So common sense isn't so common. Physical hazards, we got metal shavings from opening cans. We got staples from opening packages. Bandages. Bandages in the industry are blue. They're no longer beige because beige would get lost in food and then people would consume it. That's just, I know it's gross. I get it. But bandages fall out in an operation and that's why they're blue, so you can recognize them. Glass. I hate keeping glass in an operation. That's why most operations, most restaurants use plastic cups. Glass breaks, it shatters, it goes everywhere, and you most likely have to throw everything out in its vicinity. Dirt, natural objects such as fish bones and fillet. Right? We can do the best we can as an AKM or a kitchen manager to remove those items, but we can't always guarantee that they're there. That's why it's the responsibility of the front of the house, servers and waitresses, to tell their customers, to tell the consumers, be mindful. You're eating fish? Chew carefully. There might be bones present. 5 risk factors. Let's go ahead and write this down. 5 risk factors for foodborne illness. Purchasing food from unsafe sources. We always have to purchase from approved sources. Meaning, if John is selling honey up the street and he's your neighbor or you know him, you can't bring that into an operation. We don't know how John is producing that content. We don't know if he's health inspected, if he's backed by insurance. So we only can buy honey from U.S. Foods, Gordon Food Service, Cisco, all the major food vendors. They have backing, they're health inspected, okay, in the event of something terrible from happening. Failing to cook food correctly. We're going to talk about that more coming up. Holding food at incorrect temperatures. Using contaminated equipment and practicing poor personal hygiene. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're taking note, 80%. This number could be higher. But 80% of people that use the restroom do not wash their hands. Kind of gross. Remember that next time you go out to eat. How does food become unsafe? Time, temperature, abuse. Poor personal hygiene. Cross-contamination, poor cleaning and sanitizing. Look at that cross-contamination. We have ready-to-eat food such as lettuce sitting on the bottom shelf and it looks like ground beef or a steak product, some kind of red meat sitting on top, improperly shelved, and it's just cross-contaminated. Poor personal hygiene. Take a look at the example down there. James is scratching his arm. We touch our face, we don't even know we're doing it. We touch our hair half the time, we don't even know we're doing it. That's why we got to wash our hands frequently. Time, temperature, abuse. Looks like potato salad sat out for way too long. Most people that get sick when they go out to a picnic is usually because if it was served with potato salad, that's where they got it from. I'm not saying anything, I'm just letting you know that that potato salad will pop up on your test, so pay attention to that. Poor cleaning and sanitizing, right? We have a green bucket. He's washing. He should be washing, rinsing, and sanitizing his surfaces in between uses. Some people don't even wash. They just try to sanitize thinking that it's going to kill off all the bacteria. Come on, ladies and gentlemen, we should know from the hand antiseptics that we put on, it kills 99.98%. Okay, there's still that chance that bacteria can grow. That's why we need to make sure we wash, rinse, and sanitize our surfaces. If you're finding value in this content so far, smash that like button. What that like button does is it helps position us within YouTube for people who are searching for information related to ServSafe. So if you're finding value, do us a huge favor, hit that like button. Got any questions? Put it down in the comments. Not too many questions being asked on this channel. We would love to get that engagement rate up. So ask questions. There's no such thing as a stupid question, and I love responding to questions. So what is time temperature abuse? You need to know this, so write this one down. When food has stayed too long at temperatures good for pathogens to grow. There is this thing called the temperature danger zone. We're going to talk a little bit further about that. When food seeps into that temperature danger zone, pathogens are going to grow. Bacteria is going to grow. Food has been time temperature abused when, write this one down, it has not been held or stored at the correct temperature. It is not cooked or reheated enough to kill off those pathogens. And it is not cooled correctly. There are proper parameters we must follow when cooling food in an operation. What and how you cool food or how you reheat food or how you cook food at home has nothing to do with what we do in an operation. At home, we're feeding 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people. In an operation, we're feeding hundreds, maybe thousands of people. So we do things a lot differently. What works at home will not work in a restaurant industry. Remember that. Yes, I heard students ask all the time, but I do this, my mom does this. Good for you. Good for her. But the way we have to teach you and train you is we must train you the right way so that when you have your industry certification, you can prevent the spread of bacteria. That's the whole purpose of ServSafe. Prevent that spread of bacteria, which normally happens through cross-contamination, poor personal hygiene, time temperature abuse, everything we just stated right here. Cross-contamination, you need to know what cross-contamination. Don't mix it up with cross-contact. We'll talk about cross-contact in another chapter. But cross-contamination is when pathogens are transferred from one surface or food to another. The example here is we have produce, just like I said. Bottom shelf, top shelf had red meat, something dripped, it cross-contaminated. That produce has to be discarded. You serve that, you run your chances of increasing the risks of a foodborne illness. We even have a do not use, which means there's possible recall on this product. We'll talk about do not use in a further chapter. Cross-contamination occurs right 1, 2, or all of these down, totally up to you, but cross-contamination can cause a foodborne illness when contaminated ingredients are added to food that receives no further cooking. In the example here in the image, let's pretend it doesn't even have a do not use label on it, okay? Let's just say that that's been put on the wrong shelf. If you take that lettuce off and say, hey, listen, you know what, I'm just going to run it under water, we're going to rinse it off. Remember, you can't see, smell, or taste bacteria, so you're running that risk. If this was in my operation, I'd discard this immediately. But because it has a do not use on it, that means something that we're not going to talk about here because it has nothing to do with this chapter. Number 2, ready-to-eat food touches contaminated surfaces. We cut raw chicken on a cutting board. Instead of wash, rinsing, and sanitizing and air drying that cutting board, we just immediately put lettuce on there and start dicing up that lettuce. We've just cross-contaminated. Contaminated food touches or drips fluids onto cooked or ready-to-eat food. That's what this image is right here. A food handler touches contaminated food and then touches ready-to-eat food. Contaminated wiping cloths touch food contact surfaces. That's why it's important that we change out our liquids, our sanitizer buckets every few hours, and our cleaning liquid every few hours. You know that old saying that you hear me say often, there's always something to do in the kitchen? 99% of the time, it's cleaning. So don't join the hospitality industry if you're not willing to clean, because most operations will make you clean just to keep yourself busy. You can never clean too much. Trust me, I'm a clean freak, I know. Poor personal hygiene can cause a foodborne illness when food handlers fail to wash their hands correctly after using the restroom. I have a great YouTube short you can check out on how to properly wash your hands, but there is a proper method, and we're going to talk about that in an up-and-coming chapter. Number 2, a person coughs or sneezes onto food. That's why sneeze guards exist in an operation, to prevent the spread of those mist particles. Number 3, touches or scratches wounds and then touches food. And the last one, this is very common, it's very sad that a lot of operations will allow their employees to work while they're sick because they can't get their shift covered. But people do work while they're sick and they run the risks of spreading that bacteria. Poor cleaning and sanitizing can spread pathogens from equipment to food when equipment and utensils are not washed, when they're not rinsed and sanitized between uses. Look at that order for a second. Wash, rinse, sanitize. It doesn't say anything about sanitizing and rinsing and then washing. You must always wash, rinse, sanitize, then air dry. Food contact surfaces are wiped clean instead of being washed, rinsed, and sanitized. We've talked about this. I used to see this a lot in the operation I came from. Students would wash their stuff, but they wouldn't sanitize it. They wouldn't dry it. They wouldn't let it to air dry. That's a chemical contaminant. 118. Remember that. We're going to go back. I want to show you this. Remember we talked about there's 3 ways food becomes unsafe? Chemical. That's what we're on right now. Okay? Wiping cloths are not stored in a sanitizing solution between uses. Don't drape them over the bucket. They must be stored and submerged in the liquid. Sanitizing solutions are not at the required levels. Yes, there's such thing as under-concentration and over-concentrated solution. That's why we got to make sure we're checking our systems to make sure that they're putting out proper concentration, because we don't want to contaminate our surfaces with an over-concentrated solution of sanitizer, because what it's going to do is it's going to cause a chemical contaminant which can get you sick. Number 19, 2 types of food that are most likely to become unsafe. TCS food, that's temperature control for safety, and ready-to-eat food. Your temperature control for safety food are going to be things if you walk into a grocery store, anything that's under refrigeration or freezer. Those are foods that require a certain temperature to prevent them from going into the temperature danger zone. And then your ready-to-eat foods, foods that don't need any further cooking. Do you see how these PowerPoints go a little bit more in depth? And we spend a lot more time talking about what Chapter 1 really is. So I want to take a second and I want to pause. I want you to navigate with me for a second over to a page. Let's go to my Patreon page. There is a place for you to save your hand from a lot of work. Save yourself a ton of energy. If you go ahead and you just take a second and you join my Patreon page and support me at $3 per month, it's $36 a year, and you can cancel at any time. What I will do is I will send you all the handwritten notes that you are taking now. I will send that to you in PDF form. It's a great resource to have. You'll have access to chapters 1 through 10. Do you want to see what it looks like? Take a look. These are the examples of what they look like. Yes, they are handwritten notes done by a professional student. This student, her parents own a restaurant for 28 years. She practically took every single note that I'm asking you to copy down, and she wrote it down, and she created this beautiful, crafted study guide to help you study for your ServSafe tests. So how do you access that again? Real simple. Take a second. You go over to patreon.com/Pesci's Kitchen and you join at any one of these. But at $3 per month, we will give you access to that document. And then anytime you hear me say, if I were you, I'd write this down or write any of these down, you won't have to. You'll be able to use this as a study guide to help you trek through the course material. It's my gift to you for supporting me as I take my career online. TCS food, food requiring time and temperature control to limit the growth of that bacteria. Time and temperature control for safety. If we take chicken out of the refrigerator and we leave it on the counter, time and temperature. The longer it sits on the counter, the warmer it's going to become. The warmer it becomes, the more it's going to slip into the temperature danger zone. The longer it slips into the temperature danger zone and stays in the temperature danger zone, promotes the growth of pathogens. Pathogens is your bacteria. And it can go to unsafe levels, and that's how people can get sick, severely sick, and potentially die. Some examples of temperature control for safety foods. We got dairy products, poultry, your eggs, your meats, your poultry, your chicken, fish, shellfish, baked potato, rice, quinoa, tofu, soy products, sprouts, fresh produce, especially sliced melons, and infused oils. Ready-to-eat food is food that can be eaten without further preparation, washing, or cooking. Those pretzels you take out of your cabinet at home. You don't need to prepare them anymore. You don't need to clean them, and you certainly don't need to cook it. That's a ready-to-eat food example. Here are some other examples. Cooked food, washed fruits and vegetables, deli meats, bakery items, sugar, spices, and seasoning. 3 high-risk populations. These are people that are at the highest risks of contracting the foodborne illness. And we learned about high-risk populations during COVID. It killed off what percentage of the elderly? The majority. Okay? Their immune system was already out the door. It was already weakening. Pre-age school children. Their system is still developing. And then people with a compromised immune system. These are people that are fighting infection, whether they have cancer or HIV/AIDS. These are the people that are at higher risks of contracting a foodborne illness. And you need to know them. So how do we keep food safe? We purchase from approved, reputable suppliers. We don't buy from John's Honey Stand. We buy the honey at US Foods or Cisco or Gordon Food Service. Those are just examples of companies in our area. We control time and temperature. We make sure we keep TCS food under proper refrigeration or freezer temperatures. We prevent cross-contamination. That's the spread of bacteria from one surface to another. We make sure we wash our hands. We make sure we show up to work with a clean uniform. And we make sure that any surface we are preparing food on, we are constantly washing, rinsing, and sanitizing. Training and monitoring. Train staff to follow food safety procedures. Retrain staff. There's no such thing as overtraining. At the school I used to teach at, we would go through food safety during the first semester and the last semester. That hits on number 2, provide initial and ongoing training. Provide all staff with general food safety knowledge. Provide job-specific food safety training, and never stop retraining your staff on a regular basis. That's how we encourage our staff. Hospitality industry has the highest turnover rate, so you're constantly having to retrain, so you might as well make it a habit. And then document those training segments. Have people sign off that they understand the expectations. If you don't put it in writing, it never happened. So as I go through this material, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to teach slide by slide. I'm not going to tell you what you should copy down and what you should. We're going to put that in the timestamps, okay? But to speed up the process, I'm just going to go through the slides and give you my industry knowledge to help you study for the test. If you want, you can go to that Patreon page. You can support us every single month and have the notes right in your hand as we go through this lecture. Training and monitoring. Monitoring staff to make sure they are following the procedures, right? As a kitchen manager, that's what this industry certification is. It's a management level certification. Your job is to observe and correct and recorrect and train and retrain. It doesn't stop until you go home. You got to constantly pour into your employees. And you got to model that behavior. That's a very, very important step. I want to make sure. I'll never ask my employees to do something that I'm not willing to do myself. If I ask you to stick your hand in the toilet and clean the toilet with your hands, no, I'm right behind you. I'll do the same thing. If I ask you to mop those floors, I'm willing to mop those floors side by side with you. I'll never ask you to do something if you work with me, if I'm not willing to do it myself. Number 2, if a task is done incorrectly, take that corrective action immediately and demonstrate how it should be done. It takes about 28 times of demonstrating the same behavior before someone's going to pick it up and say, I understand. We do that by retraining an employee or multiple employees if they complete the task incorrectly. Hey, listen, guys, take a second. Let's just pause for a second. Come over here. I want to show you something. That's all it takes. Do it 28 times. Eventually it'll stick. You throw one of those sticky, my kids have those those sticky balls. They throw them up on the walls and they kind of like splatter. Sometimes they stick, sometimes they don't. Eventually, something's got to stick. Model that behavior. Employees love seeing their leaders engaged in the process. PIC, you got to know that. Person in charge. That is your Certified Food Protection Manager. Must be present on site during the operation hours. In the state of Florida, I believe you only need to have one, but most operations have two, an AM and a PM. The person in charge may not need to be on site at all times if the operation poses minimal risk for causing a foodborne illness. Based on the kind of operation it is, based on the type of food, the health department will let you know. To become a Certified Food Protection Manager, you must pass a test from an accredited program. We are an accredited program because we are certified under ServSafe. The program must be accredited by an agency approved by the Conference of Food Protection. That's ServSafe. Completing this course and passing the ServSafe exam meets this requirement. Why is it important to be certified as a food protection manager? The CDC, the Centers for Disease Control, there's those abbreviations again I'm talking about. Centers for Disease Control studies suggest that it reduces the risk of foodborne illness outbreaks. Distinguishing factor between restaurants and experienced an outbreak and those who have not. Food and Drug Administration, FDA, studies suggest more effective control risk factors for foodborne illness. You're a food service protection manager. You've gone through this course, you've spent the time, you've documented the notes, or you downloaded them on Patreon. And you understand a base understanding. You understand at least 70%. As of right now, the test is a 70% pass rate, but that could change. And we'll let you know. Check out the description just to confirm it. But right now, it is 70%. You understand at least 70% of this information, which is good enough information for you to go out and prevent the spread of bacteria. Government agencies, you need to know these. FDA, the Food Drug Administration, the USDA, U.S. Department of Agriculture. You need to know what they are, what they do. Centers for Disease Control, we learned about that through COVID. Public Health Services, that's going to be your local regulatory authorities and state. Those are going to be your health departments, okay? Regulatory authority, their responsibilities for inspecting the operation, enforcing those regulations, investigating complaints and illnesses, issuing licenses and permits. Pay attention to that one. That one's on the test. Approving construction and reviewing and approving HACCP plans. HACCP is short for Hazard Analysis Critical Control Points. So if you found value in Chapter 1, make sure you hit that like button. If you want to continue going through this comprehensive version, put it down in the comments. I'm not going to continue with any other chapter unless this community wants to hear more comprehensive version of the 7th edition. That's where we're going to leave it at. All right, so like, subscribe, join this community, and let me know in the comments if you want more in-depth review like what you just witnessed. And then I will decide from there, and I'll let you know in the community tab if we're going to go through Chapter 2 all the way to 10. Remember, it's a 324 slideshow presentation. I have no problem doing it, but I want to make sure that this community wants it. So thank you. I'll see you soon.